is in place. Temperatures really struggling, 2 to 5 Celsius, the very max. And as soon as that sun sets on Friday night, we'll see that frost developing quite widely on the map as well, with lighter winds and a bit more moisture across England and Wales. Some dense freezing fog patches will develop. This could cause some disruption if you're travelling later on Friday and indeed early on Saturday morning. Once again, though, temperatures falling well below freezing. I think across some of the snow-covered fields in Scotland, we could see lows of -10, so a biting cold start to the Saturday morning. As we go through Saturday, then, we keep some snow showers feeding in across parts of Wales. Rain at the coast, but snow inland. As we come further elsewhere across the country, there'll be still plenty of sunshine around, but some of those freezing fog patches could persist through the weekend, and it stays cold throughout. Bye-bye.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now we know right now, don't we? It is freezing outside. Do you think the government is doing enough to help us? There's been a debate raging about whether or not pensioners are doing too well out of this situation when it comes to government help. What I'm referring to is the fact that their assistance is not means tested in lots of cases. Some people are saying that is absolutely wrong. Why should rich pensioners get any money at all? Other people are saying words that I can't use, but basically saying something off. They've paid into this system all of their lives and they are entitled to the assistance. Whose side are you on? And by the way, do you think the government is doing enough generally to help us all out? And get this, climate crime on humanity. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the Green Party's description of the new mine that's been given the go-ahead in Cumbria. Is this back in the dark ages or is it all common sense? And type 2 diabetes. It's rising in young adults here in Britain faster than anywhere else in the world. Some people are saying the government should do more to stop it. But really? Is it the government's responsibility, Rishi Sunak's responsibility to stop you being unhealthy? Give me a break. Or am I missing something? And imprisonment for public protection. Basically, that means a sentence with a minimum term but not a maximum one. About 3,000 people are locked up on that basis here. Many are saying it's time to show them mercy and release them. Is it? You tell me. First of all, though, before I get into that, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines. Hello there, welcome back. You might have noticed I am not the glamorous newsreader. No, you're back with me, Michelle Dewbs. I'm with you until 7 o'clock this evening. I'll bring you those headlines as soon as I can. But here alongside me in the studio is my wonderful panel. You're just as glamorous as a newsreader, gentlemen. Don't worry about that. Kevin Craig, the CEO of PLMR, and the former advisor to Boris Johnson and now Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan. And you know the drill, don't you, on Dewbs & Co? It's not just about us here and our thoughts. Oh, no, it's about you at home as well. You can get in touch with me, gbviews at gbnews.uk is the email, or you can tweet me at gbnews. I've mentioned the stories I'm going to be talking about, haven't I? Coal mines in Cumbria, good idea or not? Prisoners that have been locked up, basically, with no end dates. What do you reckon to that? Those sentences are now not a thing going forward, but many people are languishing on them from the past. Should they be released? Should we show mercy on these people? Some are saying it's because of space restrictions in prisons. But really, is that why you kind of release people? Because you're short of room? A bit odd to me. And also diabetes type 2. Whose responsibility is it if you have got that? Don't mean to be harsh, but I think yours. However, many people are saying that the government need to do more to help us. Really? I mean, come on now. Surely there are limits to what you expect Rishi Sunak and crew to do in your life, are there, or not? I don't know. Get in touch. And by the way, you might have noticed I'm a H&M free zone. We're more Primark on this panel. What that means is I'm not going to be delving too far into the whole Harry and Meghan documentary today.
Thank God.
Honestly, because I'm not that interested, quite frankly. But if you're sitting at home going, what's she doing? She's missed out the most important topic of the day, Harry and Meghan's documentary. You can tell me your thoughts about it if you want. So as I've just been saying, gbviews at gbnews.uk is the email, or if Twitter is more your thing, get in touch at gbnews. Right, our top story, though. This winter, of course, we've all been given a little bit of help, haven't we, when it comes to our bills. Some pensioner households, though, in fact, should I say all pensioner households, can get up to an extra £300 as a cost of living payment. This is not means tested. I'm going to cut to the chase on this. I'm going to start with you, Kevin. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have the luxury of seeing this, but Kevin Craig is obviously a man that is not called because you've not even got socks on.
I was in a rush, Michelle.
What, and you forget to put your socks on?
I did, but I didn't expect you to expose me like that, so thank you.
Sorry about that. I've just been talking about how cold it is. I've got my thermals on.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to...
That's all right.
Eye, and I was just sharing that with the nation.
Thank you.
Back to the topic in hand, I apologise. Cost of living.
Yeah.
Let's start specifically with... In fact, no, let's start with the government generally, then we'll move into pensioners. First and foremost, do you think the government is doing enough per se?
Well, no. I mean, it might not shock you, Michelle, to know that I don't think this government's doing a particularly good job in almost any area. And precisely on the area of cost of living crisis, I don't know whether your politics are Labour, Tory or Lib Dem, does it make sense to give 300 quid to people who don't need it? And the only thing I would say is that the argument for not means testing these payments is, with this winter crisis upon us, if means testing would delay money getting to those who need it most, I can understand why we don't do it. But I think the state's money should be spent carefully. I think that's something that Labour people like me believe in very strongly. And I don't know why you'd give it to very, very, very well-off people, pensioners or those younger.
So you think it should be means tested then, in a roundabout kind of way?
Yeah.
Yeah? Daniel Moylan?
Well,
is he right?
Unlike you and youthful Kevin, I have to declare that I am actually, now that I've clicked over the state pension age. So I suppose I've got an interest, and it's hard to believe.
I know, well, I wouldn't believe that, actually.
I find it hard to believe. So I probably have an interest to declare. But what I want to say is that I think there's a question of fairness involved in this. People pay a percentage of their income, their salary, their wages, into a state insurance system to get them a pension at the end of the time. Unlike any other pension, what you put in doesn't affect what you get out, because we all get the same state pension. Provided you do the number of years,
Yeah.
you will get the same state pension. And that's a deal, if you like. That's the sort of social contract we've all signed up to. And I think, therefore, if you're going to have additional pensioner benefits that arise from being a pensioner, you should recognise that everyone should get treated the same, because that's the system, the principle the whole system is based on. So some people contribute a lot more than others during their life. That's fine, but they accept the same pension. If you then start double tapping them and taking the money away when it's a pensioner benefit, then I think what you do is you knock confidence in the system and you start to break that contract. And people will say, well, why should we? We should get rid of the national insurance and people should have their own pensions like they do in Australia. There won't be a state pension. And they just have to make their own provision. We'll make it mandatory. They make their own provision during their lifetime and they get by on their own. So I think you're playing a dangerous game there, really, with public confidence. Of course, it's easy to say it should go to the people who need it and not to others. And I agree with you in principle, that's true of most benefits. But I think when it comes to the national insurance system, there is a contract there is an understanding we all share, and you play about with it at risk.
Yeah, because in fairness, I mean, one of the things that I find interesting, shall we say, is that when you get to a certain earning level, you lose out on all kinds of things, whether it's child benefit, whether it's free childcare, whatever. And the flip side of that is there is an argument which is, hang on a second, I've paid my dues the same way that anyone else has paid their dues, so why shouldn't I get access to, let's call them these benefits, these perks, this assistance, whatever you want to call it. And Daniel's point is one that I agree with. You know, people potentially, hopefully, worked all their lives, contributed into the system, so why should they not receive help?
Well, because when you are so well off, right, that you don't notice or need that 300 quid, and I'm talking about the winter fuel payment, right, because Daniel's sort of broadened this out to pensions, but when you're so well off, you really shouldn't take state money if others more in need would benefit from it more. And I remember when families and individuals above a certain income level lost child benefit, right? And that was a good decision.
Do you think?
Yeah, because loads of families above an income level were getting money they didn't need. Now, just because if you're lucky enough to go through life in this country and you go up the salary bands, right, over time, I don't think it destroys your faith in our nation and our state if you lose some of those benefits that are intended to help those at the lower level of the scale. More of us are living longer. More of us are getting older. We have to, I think, constantly keep looking at how we spend the state's money.
You know, there's a clear understanding, isn't there, in people's minds between benefits, which should go to the people who need them, and an entitlement which arises in an insurance scheme. You tell most people who've got a pension that their pension is a benefit, they'll say, that's not a benefit. I paid for that.
They're saying that.
I paid for that. I earned that. That's not a benefit.
So here's a question.
So when you start saying we're going to give this something extra to pensioners, then it's not a benefit in the sense that it's means tested. It's something they're entitled to.
All right. But
that's how they see it, and quite rightly. It's not just the rich.
No, I understand that. But here's a question. If an individual has built up over their lives, say, a pension pot of £500,000, right? Should they still be entitled to the same state pension if they've done the right thing, worked hard, made that provision?
Why not? Because that person, whoever this person is, I don't know, pensioner or whatever, so this pensioner has worked his or her entire life. They've paid into this system.
Yeah.
So then...
Paid more into it than many others would have done.
Why should you then be excluded from reaping the rewards, if you like, the returns on that?
I think I agree. It's a very good question to ask back. But my worry is that this country, in many areas of the public realm, local authorities, is falling apart. Things are not as good as they used to be. Education, streets, public services, the salaries of public workers. And I'm just keen that we debate where the money goes and that it goes to the right people and the right things.
But you didn't answer my question, though. In terms of fairness, if you pay into a system your whole life, and, you know, you might be paying into multiple systems, whatever, if you pay into the basic system, the national insurance system, don't you think it is grossly unfair that just because of other provisions you may or may not have, you get zero return on that payment, which is what you're potentially suggesting?
It's a powerful argument, but I just think it could be quite worrying if people of significant wealth and provision, for example, are getting a 300 quid winter payment.
Well,
that's what we started
off. Why should they get the state pension at all? Or why should they get, even if they got the state pension, why should they get the benefit of the uprating but the triple lock? You might say, triple lock, we're going to stick with the triple lock and we'll uprate the pensions, but not if you're rich.
OK, but can we stick
You might do that, mightn't you?
But we started talking about the cost of living and the crisis at
This is a pensioner benefit.
You only want to stick to that, Kevin, if I may.
This is a benefit for pensioners. This is not the benefit for people on pension credit. This is not the help that's been given to families generally. I mean, you're right that there is, of course, an administrative problem that if you tried to means test this, it'd be next spring before anybody got any money because they don't have the right systems to be able to target it. So that is an issue, of course, and probably the main reason driving all this. But I do think it's defensible because otherwise the next thing you start saying is, well, we won't have the uprating for people above a certain income level won't get the uprating and let the pension wither on the vine. And then people are saying, but I paid into this and I paid a lot into this. And it wasn't ever a benefit. It was always a deal. It was always a deal. I pay in and I get a certain return. And it's just the same with a private insurance company. Imagine a private insurance company saying, you've paid your pension in, but we're giving you a bit much, so I'm going to take it away from you. So that's cheat. That's just fraud.
Well, James, you sum it up, one of my viewers, he sums it up perfectly in a single sentence. Michelle, this is not the state's money, it's ours. Don't you agree with it? A sensible chap, that James fella sounds.
Well, it is ours. The state's money is ours. But if we're going to talk about what's ours, don't we want our money going where it's most needed? That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying that it's quite healthy to debate these things when our public services, our public realm, and millions of people struggling on lower incomes. My question is, are we going to constantly make sure that the money is going to those most in need? But I do accept that strong bond and attachment. That's why governments tread very carefully on the triple lock issue of pensions. But we did start off, and I'm not being shifty, Michelle, I was very clear that I'm concerned about the cost of living payment going to people who are so well off who don't need it.
Someone else is saying, and I must say, you're all emailing in, lots of you, so you all push each other down, but I've just seen one pop up in my inbox and say, but Michelle, us pensioners, for example, we never got any furlough or anything like that. Good point, isn't it? Got him stumped, whoever made that point. I've lost your name.
But furlough was for folks still got their pensions throughout the crisis, didn't they?
You did?
Furlough was for those who were going to lose income and salaries and didn't have the money to live on. They didn't have the pension, which continued unabated.
I found your name, Nicola. That's who Nicola's saying.
Yeah.
And this whole thing about child benefit, I mean, I'm going massively off topic, but if you can't go off topic on your own show, what can you do? I actually don't think it's fair that when you get to a certain earning level that you don't get things like child benefit, you don't get the things like the free childcare. Why not?
But shouldn't benefits such as child benefit and income support and some of the things aimed at those most in need, if through your own hard graft...
Child benefit was aimed at children, not people in need. And it's worth... Can I just...
Well, I haven't even answered her having a dig before you've chipped in.
I wanted to answer for
He says I've had a dig at him, so go on, respond to my dig
conversationally, I think that we need to think about benefits and our money when it's paid into the state and comes back to us as citizens. Surely we want it to go most to those in need. And if through graft like you get to a certain income level and you're not on the breadline, do you need child benefit? Because your child will be so well looked after already.
My child's got zero income, the same as all the other children. All children are equal. They have no earnings for themselves. That money was to help them, not me, the parent. Anyway, Daniel, what was you saying?
I just say you need to look at this over the last 30 years. Child benefit replaced the credit that the child allowance that only went to mothers. Mothers could get when they had children, and that was in an age when mothers often stayed at home early on to look after their children in the early years. Of Gordon Brown more or less decided that all women had to go to work. That's why you've now got two-parent working is absolutely the norm. And
that's a stretch, what you just said.
No, the whole system was set up to try and force that to happen, and it has happened. So you've got this huge change, and with it, the child benefit was basically withdrawn and hedged and limited. Not just Gordon Brown, governments have successively done this as we've moved to a very new social model where mothers are expected to go out and have full-time jobs. Now, most of those are then heavily dependent on childcare, which is extremely expensive. And the idea that, and there aren't enough staff around to support the childcare that's needed, the idea that somehow that you just said, there are lots of married couples out there on two incomes, they don't need child benefit. These people are really struggling. I think they do need child benefit. And of course, there might be a few millionaires out there who don't actually need it, who are collecting it. But you're talking about a marginal number. I think most families with young kids probably do need it. I don't think it's a benefit. I think it's something that always went to mothers and should still go to mothers to help support them through the early years of having children.
And I tell you, I've opened Pandora's box now because I look at the time, I've got to go to a break, but I wish that I could have now this whole conversation about the cost of childcare, for example. I've set myself off there. That's like a red rag to a bull for me, that one, I can tell you. I spent a fortune on it. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some of your thoughts on the whole pension situation. Dewbs, who's this? Howard says, Michelle, it would cost way more in pen pusher salaries to means test any of this than it would just to give it all out. You make a sensible point there, Howard, so you do. I'm going to take a quick break. When I do come back, I'll have some more of your thoughts, but also I want to ask you about the coal mine in Cumbria that has been given the go-ahead. It's been called a climate crime on humanity. Is that a little bit extreme, or is that absolutely right? What's your thoughts? Give them to me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry. Lots of conversations into my inbox. I can tell you lots of feedback on that pensioner conversation. Steve says, I've got a £500,000 private pension, and to get it, I sacrificed holidays, cars and a social life. If someone squandered their earnings and now has no private pension, basically, I think Steve's saying, well, who's got the most entitlement then to a state pension? Oh, I don't know, Steve. Controversial there. If you haven't got a £500,000 private pension, is it because you've squandered your earnings? Oh, I don't know. Who's this? Laura. You say, Michelle, I haven't got any children, so why should I be expected to pay for those who have? If you can't afford your kids, don't have them, says Laura. Oh, ouchie, Laura. Ultimately, Laura, I hear you about not having kids, etc., but we need people to have kids, don't we, in order for this country to prosper. You know, if you don't have children, if people don't have children, and I think we've got quite a low bear for it, actually, compared to some other countries, then who moves society forward? Who progresses population? So I would say it's in everybody's interests.
Birth rate's now 1.63, which is well below replacement rate.
How do you know that off the top of your head?
I happen to know that off the top. I don't know very much off the top of my head, but we're well below replacement rate. So the number of, you know, the population is falling.
Who needs Google when you've got Daniel Moylan to your left-hand side here? That's what I say. Right, let's talk. I'm going to check that, by the way, and make sure it's right, because I've got no idea. I can't remember what the birth rate is, but I just know it's low. Right, let's talk coal mine, shall we? A new one has been approved by the government. First one, by the way, in about 30 years. Should it have been? By the way, did I introduce you guys when we came back? I did reintroduce you. Oh, good.
You even told us about your thermal underwear.
I did. Oh, I was wondering what you was going to say there. You even taught. I was thinking, what if I just whispered to you two in the break that you're about to share with the nation?
No, you announced it on air, actually.
Oh, right. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I always think it's interesting to talk about thermals on air. It's one of those conversations that gets people talking, doesn't it? Anyway, as I was just saying, yes, the first UK coal mine in 30 years has now been approved. This is over in Cumbria. And what's interesting, the steel that it's going to be basically mining for, it's all to do with steel creation. Did I just say the steel that we're going to be mining for? I meant the coal that we're going to be mining for will be used not for energy, but more for steel production. Obviously, you won't be surprised to learn that many people are furious about this decision. They're saying it's taking Britain back to the Dark Ages. Some people are saying perhaps we're even open, Daniel, because people are imagining legal challenges to it and all kinds. What's your position?
I think it's fantastic news. I think that, first of all, this is, as I understand, is commercial, private venture. It's there for profit, which is good. It's not another government scheme. Second thing is it's going to bring jobs. But most importantly, if we're going to have a steel industry, and we do need steel, you've got to have coke, because steel was invented in the 18th century and people discovered what you could do when you mixed iron and coke. You get steel. And you have to have coke. Coke is basically coal. And we need this. We need it. Now, there are two ways we can get it. We can mine our own abundant coal, which is of very high quality, and we can use it to make steel, or we can import it. And we will be doing one or the other. That is the steel-making industry in Britain, what's left of it, can be supported by coke from this mine.
Well, no, because at least two of the steel creators here have said that they're not going to use this coking coal. That is a tough one for my accent. And actually, it's estimated that about 83% of this stuff will be exported out.
Well, that would be fantastic, because that would be a great deal better than what we do at the moment, which is we import the coal. And we need more energy resilience in this country, and this is very, very good news. And as the planning inspector pointed out, it's a great job creator as well. So I think we should be entirely behind it. And as for the people, can I just make this comment before Kevin comes on? Kevin is a moderate, sensible, sounding figure, but behind him...
Well, he forgets to put his own socks on.
He does forget.
Carry on. I like this, Daniel. Carry on.
He does forget to put his socks on, but behind him, there are all these hysterical people crying about crimes against humanity and stuff like that, as if we're murdering people on the beaches. It is not the intention of net zero that we should never create any carbon. We will be using carbon even beyond 2050, even if net zero is totally achieved, because the offset is net zero. Net zero will be offset through carbon capture and other means. So the idea that we'll be a completely carbon-free economy has never been built into this. There will always be some need for carbon-based materials, and this is one of them, where you simply cannot make steel without coke, and coke is a form of coal.
Kevin?
Well, I think it's the fellow member of the House of Lords, Daniel, formerly known as John Gummer, correct?
Full of lefties, the House.
Well, he's a Conservative member of the House of Lords. So, hang on, Conservative member of the House of Lords, you're calling him a lefty. Yeah. Chairman of the Climate Change Committee. This Tory called the scheme absolutely indefensible. Alok Sharma, president of COP26, said approval would damage Britain's international reputation. Now, I get the need for jobs in a really economically deprived area. And I'm going to tell you something really interesting that Ed Miliband says, which you might think is a contradiction, but it isn't, right? He talks about if you're worried about the planet and the end of the world, you also have to be worried about the end of the month and the standard of living and earning a wage. So I totally understand why many folks in Cumbria are pleased about this. But I think this is a bad decision. I think we should be moving away from coal. And I think...
And steel.
What? No, but it's not British steel companies that are going to use this.
All right, you should be importing this
right?
coal.
Well, hang on.
Importing
and
coal.
we,
okay,
I think it's
Chinese,
a very I think it's a really backward step for our country to be approving basically a dirty technology, right? But I understand the people who are excited about the jobs.
Fine, clean, high-quality anthracite.
But it's not. It's going to emit loads of carbon emissions.
Not this filthy old lignite we'd be
why do we never talk as much as we need to on this channel about the state of the planet and the quality of our air and climate change? But we talk about it and we just go, oh, it's just...
Huge improvement.
No.
Look
when
at the improvements over the last 70 years.
Hang on. Too often it's talked about as if it's whinging liberal lefties making up that there's a problem.
It usually is.
Now, I agree, language crimes against humanity is intemperate, right? I wouldn't phrase it like that. But our planet is really in danger, right? And we have to set an example as a country. And what we want to do, we should be creating thousands and thousands of green jobs, right? That's still said. Renewables, onshore wind, those are green jobs.
What's a green job? Why does it have to be either or?
Well, onshore wind, there are a couple of people who occasionally climb up inside a turret to check the mechanical...
That's a devilish characterisation.
No, but I really want to know what these green jobs are. That
renewable technologies doing so much more to harness wind, tidal power, solar. The jobs will come from us as a country scaling up what we do here, building the technology.
You have a tidal barrier.
I just answered it.
Tidal barrier.
Your mob never did want to approve it in Swansea.
It operates mechanically.
Specific answer. Sorry to talk across you, my lord.
Tidal barrier.
One sec, you're being very naughty.
Yeah,
right?
pack it in.
Yeah, sorry to cut across you, Danny. The government had a massive chance to do a really innovative scheme in Swansea involving new tidal technologies, creating energy. Didn't do it. That's what I mean by green jobs.
Let's say they had done it, and it was very, very expensive. But let's say they had done it.
It does HS2. That's hugely expensive.
I'm not saying they should or shouldn't have done it. Maybe they should. It was very expensive. But let's say they had done it. How many jobs... Once it was built, how many jobs would actually be involved in managing that tidal barrier?
Well, ongoing basis.
Well, I imagine there'd be quite a few. We have Siemens, for example, in Hull. A couple of my family work there, actually. They do all kinds of different things around manufacturing these blades, maintaining these blades and all the rest of it. But, Kevin, my question to you, I guess, is why does it have to be either or?
Well, it's just the either or is that coal mining and these are old and, to use the straightforward language, they're dirty technologies. The emissions that they release go against all the commitments we've made on an international stage.
Yes, you see, and that is interesting because when I'm looking at the objection to this, much of the objection is coming from phrases like this undermines the UK's authority as a leading climate kind of thing. Yeah. It undermines our reputation. Like, how important is that kind of reputation? Why does the UK have to be this leading force in climate stuff?
Well, I totally get your question, right? But either we believe as a country that the planet is heating too fast, that the ice caps are melting dangerously quickly, that sea levels are rising too fast. Either we believe that or we don't. And it was your mutual pal, in fact, or, object of admiration, Boris Johnson, for you two. He was very vociferous about this sort of stuff, about climate change and environmental leadership. And this decision goes against that.
But Michel has a point.
Thank you.
Nothing we do in this country...
What happens?
Nothing we do in this country is going to affect the global consequences of climate change because we are responsible for 1% of the world's emissions. Anything we do in this country has to be on the basis that we are showing the world where to go.
We've got to lead.
So this is entirely
This is our
about
planet,
why
it matters.
we
Why do we have
have
to take
got
the
to lead.
forefront of
But have
absolutely
we not?
everything?
Doesn't there come a point when you get down the road a bit and you're leading, and you look behind you and you see the big boys like China aren't following? Doesn't there come a point when you start to think that maybe that strategy of leadership, at your own cost, at the cost of importing this coal, which we need, at your own cost, is actually not really working?
Well,
I understand the need for jobs.
There you go. You can understand each other in the break. John says this welcome decision has upset all the right people. But how long do you reckon it'll be before we see a U-turn on it? I think you've got a good point there, because this is not a done deal. Yes, OK, it's been given the go-ahead, but there'll be a lot of people waiting in the wings, ready to mount legal challenges and everything. So will it even get off the ground? I don't know. I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not you think it should in the first place. The number of jobs, by the way, is estimated to be about 500, just to give you a little bit of context there. Right, going to take a quick break. Do you have type 2 diabetes? I ask because the amount of young adults in this country that do have type 2 diabetes is increasing. In fact, it's the highest in, I think, the rest of the world. Why? And who's to blame? Some people are saying the government should do more. But isn't it our responsibility to be healthy? See you in a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, Kevin Craig, who's the CEO of PLMR and a former advisor to Boris Johnson and now Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan. Let's get into our next topic, shall we? Britain has got the world's biggest increase of type 2 diabetes. A major study which looked at 204 countries found that the UK was the worst affected. The obesity crisis, by the way, has led to nearly a 5-fold increase in the number of under-40s living with the condition since 1990. I read these stories and I look at the reactions and response to them, and I'm astonished at how many people think that the government should do more. Should they, Daniel?
Well, I'm with you, Michelle. The fact is the government made itself ridiculous, in my view, during the pandemic, giving medical advice. I'm always happy to get medical advice, but I'd like to get it from a doctor. I wouldn't go to my local MP. I'm in the House of Lords. I'm happy to give you medical advice if you want. My medical advice to Kevin is don't go out on a day like this without socks.
Yes. You're not going to live that down, Kevin. You're not going to live it down.
But frankly, if I were Kevin, I wouldn't listen to my medical advice because I've got no medical qualifications at all. And nor is Rishi Sunak and nor have any of the people in the cabinet. Well, maybe none in the cabinet I can think of. So I would say listen to your doctor. And listen to the nurses, but don't listen to the government.
What they mean by this, when they want the government to do more, Daniel, what they're saying is stuff like, I don't know, higher sugar taxes. They will say stuff like buy one, get one free on unhealthy things.
Well, all the higher sugar taxes did was put prices up without having any effect. I went into my local supermarket, corner shop, just after the sugar tax came in, because I drink a lot of Diet Coke, which has no sugar, written in big letters around it. And he'd put the price up of the Coke, he'd put the price of the ordinary Coke up by 50p, and he'd also put the price of my Diet Coke up by 50p. And I said, why you put it up by 50p? He said, sugar tax. I said, look, it says no sugar. Just shrugged his shoulders. Well, I mean, just put the prices up. There should have been an incentive for me to buy that, should have get rewarded for buying the Diet Coke. Not a chance. These things don't work the way people intend. You don't notice it. They don't have any great effect. The one that probably has worked a bit is heavy taxes on cigarettes. That, I think, has contributed to people smoking less. But then I think the government's entitled to tax luxuries. They always have tax luxuries for hundreds of years, because people accept that with luxuries like perfume and scotch and things like that, people should be paying that bit extra on it, and that's a fair tax. But I think when it starts coming to sort of, ordinary food and trying to nudge people hither and yon with taxes is just preposterous.
Kevin?
Really. Well, Kevin loves taxes.
I don't. I like what taxes do to make this country a decent place to be proud of living in. But your old boss, Daniel, and our erstwhile Prime Minister, Michelle, who I think on occasion you do admire and lament the current passing of, Boris.
I do sometimes.
Yeah. One of the things that I was impressed with him that he did, the few things, was he announced a crackdown on the advertising of junk food. He announced a crackdown on buy one, bog off deals, buy one, get one free of junk food, right? Because he understood that these things can have an impact on diabetes in our country. And it's very misleading, again, and a bit mischievous when Daniel talks about, don't take advice from MPs or peers. When the government takes decisions on health policy, it's politicians fronting it up with behind them an army of experts, right? Now, so... hang on.
Like the people who put us into lockdown.
Well, please not today. Please, let's not go there.
Give him a night off bashing
please,
him up over the old lockdown thing.
So we should be really worried by the prevalence and growth of diabetes in our country. And the government, not only should it go back to the things that Boris did a U-turn on that I've just mentioned, but also let's give free school meals all the time to kids at the bottom of the socioeconomic spectrum, because school meals can be nutritious and give them guarantees of nutrition and healthy diets when often they don't get it for other circumstances. Governments can intervene in health and public policy, and so they should.
Yeah.
Sorry, feeding children is a great thing to do, but it is not part of health policy. If you're going to say my dinner is health policy, I'm going out to dinner after this, and that's a part of health policy. No, it isn't. Everyone has to eat.
No, but you're not a poor youngster, though, are you? That's what Kevin's point is. If you've got some poor children whose families can't afford or choose not to spend their money on, as often is the case, healthy food for their children, then should the state step in and help them? I would say, actually, yes, it should. But that's different, though, isn't it, to adults making conscious choice to fill their faces repeatedly with too much unhealthy, processed, sugary, bad food.
Yeah, right. But I think
it is, though, isn't it? You can't see that that's different.
Well, it is different, absolutely. But I think it is good government to try and encourage and help people to make the right choices. Like when we changed the law on seatbelt. No, what?
Do you need Rishi Sunak to tell you not to eat junk food all day long?
Well, I personally don't need him to do that, but do I welcome when the government of the day encourages us as much as it can to lead healthy lives and helps us to do that? Yeah, that's good government.
Is it?
Yeah.
Where's personal responsibility in all of this?
Personal responsibility.
He struggles now.
Yeah.
I don't struggle. I'm just
that was a
thinking
bit of a struggle,
when
I
our
think.
host makes a good point, I like to reflect and listen and not knee-jerk react, right?
Go on then,
So, you know, personal
personal
So personal responsibility is part of it. Where was personal responsibility?
How much of a part?
Well, a big part, but not all of it.
Majority?
Education. People need education all the time. Messages reinforced.
But we agree with that. People do need education and
doesn't.
proper information.
No, you
But
don't
I'm
need to be
saying-
educated to know that if you sit
No, but
there and
you-
eat
what I meant
six-pack of
was-
crisps all day long,
Yeah,
you're going to be fat.
that is true. But nonetheless, people need information. And I'm saying doctors and nurses are an appropriate source of that information. They're people you can trust on this topic. I'm saying the government should broadly stay out of this. They make themselves ridiculous. The second thing is, I don't think these nudge taxes work. If the government thinks a particular type of food is dangerous to health, they should ban it, because we do that with all sorts of things, all sorts of foods that could be on our plate, could be in our shops, but we ban them, different ingredients, because we think they're unsafe. That's absolutely fine. But the idea that you should be nudging people as to what they should do, I think is very, very strange indeed and ineffective.
Well, there you go. Someone, who is it? Simon. You make a very good point, Simon, so you do, not in relation to diabetes, but in relation to the school dinners. Kevin brought up whether or not kids should be getting free school meals, etc. And what you say, is it Simon, or have I just given you the wrong name? I think it was Simon. I'll double check your name because I think it's a good suggestion, a good point that you raised, so I do want to credit you with it. But what you're saying is, when it comes to whether or not we should subsidise meals for children, how can anyone be happy with subsidising canteens in places like the House of Commons and then say you shouldn't be subsidising primary school kids' meals? Do you want to respond to that, Daniel?
Well, I haven't found these subsidised luxury restaurants in the Palace of Westminster.
Come off it. You know that.
I don't know where
well at the restaurants.
I haven't found them.
Subsidised.
There's one
Well, I found
amongst
them,
the
and I don't like that.
amongst the restaurant. Well, you tell me. Amongst the restaurants at the House of Lords End, there is something. It looks like a canteen. You take your tray, you go along, and you get your food. Anyone can go there, including me. But the majority of people going there are the policemen, the attendants, the people who are working the early shifts, the late shifts. The whole palace of Westminster is full of people who are doing perfectly ordinary jobs. They're not grandees, they're not lords, they're not MPs. There's a couple of thousand of them, and they need to have their lunch, they need to have their dinner, they're working late, they're coming in early, and there's a canteen for them.
Well,
what's the problem? It's the works canteen.
I think Simon's got a very good point, because what I suspect the point you're making, Simon, is some of those people working in those environments are quite well off, aren't they, in terms of their salaries?
Simon.
And if the taxpayer's comfortable subsidising those alcoholic drinks and food, then why not the school dinners?
It's not
He's still going on about it, but I'm going to take a quick break because
You
if I don't...
show me the subsidised alcohol.
Here's dining room.
Tell me where
it's full of it.
In the break, I'm going to try and bring up one of these menu things
It's
to
£6
show
for
it.
an ordinary glass of red wine.
Right. Anyway, Daniel, I'll talk to you about these meals in a minute, because I want to go to a break because we've got an interesting conversation coming up and I want to make time for it. There's these sentences, basically, which is a minimum term, but not a maximum term. So basically, these people can be locked up ad infinitum, really. Is that the wrong thing, or is it the right thing? Some people are calling now for these people, there's about 3,000 of them, to be shown mercy and to be released. Should they be? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewbs, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs & Co.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Kevin Craig, who's the CEO of PLMR, and the former advisor to Boris Johnson and now Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan. I didn't have time to find you a menu that was showing subsidised things, but I did find a value. £17 million of taxpayers' money is what's been spent over the last 3 years, apparently, subsidising restaurants and bars in the House of Commons. You said when I told you that you don't go down that rough end, so you wouldn't know about it.
I wouldn't know what goes on in the House of Commons. That's all rough stuff down there.
Well, there you go. On the
They
pensioners,
shout at each other all the time. It's not like the House of Lords.
on the pensioners one, I was asking at the start of the show whether or not pensions, the assistance to pensioners should be means tested. I ran a Twitter poll on that, by the way. 56% of you say no, they should not. And 44% of you say yes, it should be means tested. So there you go. This week the House of Lords has debated whether 3,000 or thereabouts offenders should be released from prison. They serve something which is currently called an IPP sentence, the type of which was abolished back in 2012, but there's still many people languishing on them. The IPP stands for Imprisonment for Public Protection. Essentially, it's where you get a minimum tariff but not a maximum one. Daniel Moylan, some people are saying that it's time now for these people to receive mercy and to be released. Should they be?
Yeah, on the whole, I think they should. And the Commons Justice Select Committee has just produced a very hard-hitting report exposing this, what is a very serious historical injustice. These sentences were imposed between 2006 and 2012 when they were abolished because they contravened the human rights of the people who they were given to, and a different system was put in place. But nothing was done retrospectively for the people who'd received the sentences. Now, when you get a sentence, you get what's called a tariff, which is a minimum term. We've got people in jail who got a 2-year tariff who have been in jail ever since, 10 years beyond the tariff that they would have served, with no end date in sight. It's a form of huge mental cruelty. I acknowledge that they committed violent offences to be in there, and I acknowledge there are probably some people amongst them who are probably very dangerous, and maybe special circumstances should be taken. But the vast majority of them have served way beyond what anybody else would serve, and they're in a deep psychological problems. And we need to find a way of getting them out. You say there are 3,000, there are actually about 6,000, because about 3,000 in jail, 6,000 out on licence. Because even if you're let out, you're only let out on licence.
And don't you have like a licence for about 10 years or something?
You have to serve 10 years on the licence clean before you can even be considered for discharging the sentence. That's almost impossible because people get hauled back the whole time, often not for committing crimes. There was a case only recently of a guy who was out on licence. He was accused of a crime. He went to court. He was acquitted. But his probation officer, because the probation service is very nervous about this, partly because of the sort of publicity that goes on, his probation officer said, OK, you've been acquitted, but you're going back to jail. And you're going back to jail for an indefinite term, even though you've just been acquitted of a minor offence. What is the justice in all of this? Now, you might say you don't let dangerous people out on the street.
Oh, definitely say that, yes.
If that's the case, then you don't want the present criminal justice system, because the system we have is you get sent to jail for a period. At the end of the period, you're let out whether you're dangerous or not. If you don't like that, that's fine. Then have permanent detention for everybody until they're safe. But that means nobody will ever agree they're safe. Nobody has an incentive to do so. least of all the politicians, least of all the probation officers, and you'll have people who'll never get out. Quite apart from the fact you need a whole load more prisons, there's no justice involved in that at all.
Kevin Craig?
Well, I think, like me, most listeners and viewers would have been really staggered to learn about this whole area. And I know that Daniel's one of those members of the House of Lords who's been very active on it. I go back to a quote from the Ministry of Justice that talks about these sentences were originally handed down by judges who decided offenders posed a significant risk to the public, so it's right that the parole board determines when they are safe to release. Now, that's the principle, right? Because I think the justice system too often doesn't work enough for victims of crime and protecting the public. But there's some interesting detail behind this. David Blunkett, a Labour member of the House of Lords who I know and respect, has said he got it wrong because this came in under his time. So I listen to that, I note it, and I also read of one guy who has been serving on and off 10 years for originally nicking a mobile phone, right? But for me, my number one care is for victims of crime and protection for the public. But prison, where we might disagree, Daniel, prison should be about rehabilitation, because that is an aim from the Ministry of Justice and the Prison Service. And the Tory government, which I assume you still are broadly supporting, in 2020 talked about 10,000 additional prison places. So I do think, let's look at the detail, and some of the stories of the individuals do worry me, but number one, protection of the public and of victims of crime.
Well, I'd like to make two comments there. The first is, the government is not being totally honest in saying the judges made those decisions, because certainly in the first 3 years, the law was done so tightly that many judges were forced to give these sentences and protested about it at the time, even when they thought they were inappropriate. And please discuss that with any judge who's had any experience of them. A lot of these people should never have had these sentences in the first place, and the people who said that were the judges. The law was then relaxed to give a bit more discretion to judges later on. It was all a tick box exercise originally, rather than an exercise of justice, of judicial discretion. The second thing I'd say is, I know it's very easy to say the phrase, the protection of the public is the number one objective of the criminal justice system.
Well, yeah, it should be.
No, I don't think it should be.
What?
No, I've never taken that view. The purpose of the criminal justice system, first and foremost, has to be justice. The Ministry of Justice is not the ministry for public protection. One of the things you aim for when you exercise criminal justice is to protect the public. Another is to give due punishment.
Yeah,
a third, except the system fails completely in the case of IPP prisoners, was intended to be rehabilitation, but that never actually happened. That collapsed, and David Blunkett will be the first to complain about that. He'd point out that collapsed completely after it was introduced. It was meant to be a very small number of prisoners, and there's meant to be a way of helping them. It turned out to be a large number of prisoners, and there's no way of helping them. And I'll just say one other thing.
Go on.
With the size of the prisons, or the pressure on the prisons, the Ministry of Justice is forecasting that the number of people serving IPP sentences in jail is actually going to go up by 2,000 over the next 4 years, because that's the number they're expecting to be recalled net.
See, Gary...
So this is 2,000, just by not recalling and being more sensitive about the ones who are already living in the community. You could actually save 2,000 prison places.
One of my viewers, Gary, has said basically he thinks that all of this is to do with capacity in prisons, and that's why this is on the agenda, that's why people are considering it. Should capacity... I mean, if you've got capacity in prison, if you've reached capacity in prisons, then I would be saying, well, go build more prisons then. What I wouldn't be saying is, goodness gracious me, I've run out of space, let me release some prisoners.
But the system has always done that.
Well, I just go back to the government is on record. It was June 2020. This government said 10,000 additional new prison places, all about protecting the public from those who represent high risk. It was stated as an objective in these new prison places. And I think, you know, nobody wants miscarriages of justice. If somebody is safe to come out or somebody doesn't deserve to go back in, I think we can all support that.
Well, let me know your thoughts on that. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's got people talking was the conversation from earlier in this show about the child situation, about child benefits. So many of you are saying that you don't want to pay for the children of others. You're not answering my question, though. How do you progress society, though, when we all grow up and die, if people are not having children? Surely you want society to continue, don't you? Somebody's very helpfully as well sent me a couple of meals off the Parliament menu. Do you know, I was just talking about it all being subsidised. Pressed chicken and caramelised onion with tarragon and chive jelly, pickled vegetables and sourdough. How much do you reckon for that delicious-sounding meal? This is in one of the Parliament restaurants. Don't look at the answer.
Great
How much
question.
do you reckon for that meal?
Oh, I'd expect that'd be 27 quid for that.
27 quid. Yeah, I'm talking about in Parliament.
In the Peers dining room.
In the Commons, House of Commons dining.
Oh, I wouldn't know. They can't be trusted with knives
Hazard
and
a
forks down there.
guess.
12 quid.
So you say 12 quid. How much do you reckon? Chicken, caramelised onion with
It
tarragon,
depends which
chive jelly,
restaurant
beer.
it's in.
Hey, listen, £2.84.
What?
And these are the people that tell you, ladies and
He's
gentlemen.
against
that
free
you
restaurant
have
meals.
to
Which
die
restaurant is that?
children.
Which
Bang to rights,
Well, I'll
my
tell you,
lord.
it's the members' dining room, apparently.
Oh, well, I can't
Anyway.
even get in there.
Well, yeah, they don't let the riffraff in. Right, on that note, that is all I've got time for. Daniel, Kevin, thank you for your time. Thank you at home. Lawrence Fox is up next. Lawrence, good evening. What have you got for us?
Evening, Dewbs. We have the moaning Markles, Trump's taxes, and the greatest football song ever written. But first, the weather.
Hello again, I'm Luke Mile with your weather forecast. As we head through Thursday night, a very cold one on the cards for many with a sharp frost, and we keep the risk of snow and ice. That's because our air is coming down from the Arctic, a very cold air mass. You can see the blues flooding the map there, and that will give us the risk of some very cold nights, particularly as we go into the weekend as well, with the risk of freezing fog. But back to the here and now. Through this evening, we've got the risk of ice across parts of West Wales, the southwest of England and eastern counties of England. These are the areas we've seen showers through the day. We've also got a snow and ice warning in place across Scotland. Temperatures